Sziasztok! Nagyon sok szeretettel köszöntelek benneteket. A Terhességi viszketés vett komolyan Facebook oldal nézőit és követőit. Ahogy ígértük, elkezdjük közzétenni a szakértőinkkel készített videósorozatot, és az első hely mindenképpen azt a személyt illeti, aki a magyarországi szervezet megalapításában tudtán kívül nagyon nagy részt vállalt, mondhatni neki köszönhető, tőle kaptam én inspirációt. Kérlek, fogadjátok nagy szeretettel Jenny Chambers-t, az angliai ICP Support nevű szervezet megalapítóját, és az ő történetét, és hallgassátok őt. So, my first question is to you. Could you please tell us about your experiences of kolesztázis of pregnancy during your pregnancies?
Of course. So my experience of kolesztázis of pregnancy goes back quite a few years, and it goes back to the late 1980s when I was pregnant for the first time, and I noticed around 28 weeks that I was itching. And I mentioned it to the GP, who reassured me that everything was fine and nothing to worry about. But at just under 37 weeks, I went into labour at home, and unfortunately, by the time we got to the hospital and they checked the baby, they had to confirm that the baby had died. And we were sent away from hospital with absolutely no idea of what had happened, absolutely none. And we were just told to try again for another baby. So we did, and about a year later I was pregnant again, and noticed around 27, 28 weeks, I'd started the itching again. And I thought this was really odd that I'd had it the first time. And none of my friends had had this itching, and it tended to be on my hands and my feet, but also my arms and my legs. And I noticed it more at night as well. So I went back to the doctor and mentioned it again, and he said, nothing to worry about. It's just one of those things. So we continued with pregnancy, and I was induced at 38 weeks, and I had my son, Alexander, and everything was great. And then a couple of years later, we wanted to try again for one last baby. And again, in this pregnancy, I itched. By this time, I just thought, this can't be right. This is very odd. I only do this in pregnancy, and none of my friends itch like this. What's going on? And I was really worried, because I thought, well, we never found out a reason why our first baby, our little girl Victoria, had died. And I did wonder, were there any connections? But the doctor said, no, absolutely nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with you. And we asked if we could have this baby at 38 weeks, which was the same time that Alex had been born. And they said, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to have your baby early. But the itching was just awful. I was losing sleep. I was getting very tired. I had a little boy of 3 to look after, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. And I actually became quite depressed. And we kept asking, could we have this baby early? Could we have this baby early? And eventually they said that I could be induced at 39 weeks. And 2 days before I was due to go in and be induced, I went into labour at home, and when we got to the hospital, they also had to confirm that the baby had died. And we were absolutely devastated. I didn't think I could find the strength to go through another birth and to go through another funeral, death certificates, and all the grief that comes with losing a baby. But we did. And it was a few weeks after that that I was invited back to the hospital to see another doctor. And it was that doctor who gave me the diagnosis of cholestasis in pregnancy. And she had to tell me that all the blood tests I'd had done during pregnancy were abnormal. And this came as a big shock because we'd been told they were normal. And then she had to tell me that the only way to treat the condition then was for me to have been induced at 38 weeks, which of course is what we'd fought so hard for. And so once I had that information, apart from being angry, absolutely angry that we'd been let down and not listened to, I wanted to do something positive. And I realised from talking to my friends and from talking to friends who were doctors that no one knew about this condition in England. No one knew about it. And all women who were pregnant and itching were being told that it was normal. So I started to raise awareness, I started to talk to doctors, and then I eventually went on to found the charity ICP Support. And I also went on to have another little boy, Tim, and he was born at just before 35 weeks because I got the condition again. And so again, we're talking back in the 90s, early 90s. And so it was really, they thought it was better to get him out a bit earlier than risk me going through another stillbirth.
Thank you so much that you shared with us this story. So could you please tell me, how did your doctor reacted to your second loss? So I think your obstetrician.
They apologized. I went back and I saw the obstetrician who'd looked after me. We actually made a complaint to the hospital mainly because they had told me blood tests were normal when they weren't. And that really worried me, that they might be doing this with other women and that they didn't understand the blood test, which is called a liver function test, that they actually didn't understand what that liver function test meant. And I think it's also important to say, again, at this stage, back at that stage, bile acid testing wasn't being performed. It hadn't been introduced as a way of diagnosing cholestasis of pregnancy. So everybody was very much reliant on liver function tests. But to tell me they were normal when they clearly weren't, I felt we'd been really let down. And I felt that we had tried to tell them so many times that this wasn't right, that this itch was not a normal itch. And they just hadn't listened. And he apologized. The hospital apologized. They sent me a letter that said they felt they'd let me down. And that was all I needed. I didn't need anything else. I just needed to have it confirmed that they realized what they'd done and that they were going to do things differently from then on so that babies could be protected.
Videósorozatunk következő részében Jenny Chambers arról fog beszámolni, hogy a vele történt tragédiák után hogyan kezdett 30 évvel ezelőtt egy jótékonysági szervezet építésébe, milyen nehézségekkel küzdött, és hogy 30 évvel ezelőtt az internet kora előtt hogyan tudott egy ilyen szervezet építésébe kezdeni. Kérlek, hallgassátok szeretettel!